Everybody, it is 6 o'clock and the entire board is here and present. It's lovely. We'll make that official. So I am going to call to order this regular board meeting of the Truckee-Donner Public Utility District. It is 6 p.m. on Wednesday, April 6th. Could I get a roll call vote, please? Not vote, we're just calling the roll.
Director Aguirre.
Here.
Director Harris.
Here.
Director Loyalton.
Here.
Vice President Bender.
Here.
And President Finn.
Here.
Thank you.
Excellent. It is time for the Pledge of Allegiance. So as you are willing and able, please stand and join us. How about Director Bender? Would you like to lead us tonight?
Here. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Brian, do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are no changes this evening.
Thank you very much. Which brings us to our public comment. This is time that is set aside for the public to address the board on any matter that is not on the agenda. So testimony related to any agendized matter should be addressed at that time. Do we have any public comment that is not associated with the agenda this evening?
Madam President, we do. We have a letter comment from Bob Marshall, and he submitted this a little earlier today to talk about the Broadband initiative, not necessarily about the committee. Where would you like that public comment inserted at?
You know, we might as well do it now, and I do have that. I was thinking I was going to do it, but that's on the consent calendar, so, and it's not specific. So I will read it now, so that we will make sure that Mr. Marshall is heard. Okay. To the board and staff of the TDPUD and the Community Broadband Committee, on behalf of Pluma Sierra Telecommunications, PST, I'd like to give a bit of background and clarify a few items that were discussed at the last district meeting. This feedback is based on our ongoing partnership with Truckee-Donner and our decades of experience in the industry. Comment number 1. There was some confusion about wholesale access to broadband. PST's service on the Truckee-Donner system is open access, as it is for our entire system. Wholesale customers are great and encouraged. We would be delighted to serve Oasis, T-Mobile, Verizon, or anyone else. PST and Oasis are currently working on several locations where Oasis will offer retail service. Comment number 2. One of the slides from the Broadband Committee made the comment that PST was going for the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit is already being served by AT&T. They have all the subsidized accounts, including colleges, schools, and hospitals, as well as Suddenlink, hotels, and the cellular carriers. PST has been focused on businesses that need high-speed internet, as well as all interested parties that can connect to the TDPUD system. Lessons learned and market potential. We would be glad to further share our experiences in the business in general, and specifically with the Truckee area. Please let us know if you would like a presentation. What are the roadblocks? The short version on why expansion is tough is the utility poles in the Truckee area are owned jointly by AT&T and Truckee-Donner. The Truckee-Donner has had to battle with AT&T about overloading for many years. If someone wants to attach a new fiber optic line to an overloaded pole, the new attachment must pay all upgrades. The average cost of upgrading a pole is $20,000 per pole. Please let us know if you'd like more detailed information on roadblocks. What is the best model for the Truckee community? We encourage you to hire a consultant. That consultant will have key questions like, A, what size long-term investment is the TDPUD board willing to make? B, what time frame will the TDPUD allow for partners? C, how much staff time is TDPUD willing to donate to the effort, especially to set up a clear map of what fibers can be used? Grants. There are some grants available with state funds in the Truckee area. Whomever applies for the grants will need to be able to develop and keep customers for a decade after project completion. There are grants available for many of the mobile home parks and a few residential areas. The deadline for applying for state grants is Q3 of this year. Please let us know if you'd like more information on any of these topics. Sincerely, Bob Marshall, GM, Pluma Sierra Telecommunications. Thank you, Mr. Marshall. I look forward to collaborating with you in the future, if you're listening. Okay, so I believe that is the end of the public comments that are not associated with specific items. Okay, which brings us to director updates. I'm going to work my way from the far end to me. Director Harris, would you have an update this week?
Yeah, it's just a quick one. I just wanted to share with everybody that on Monday, I went to the rec center. Mayor Klövstad had coordinated a tour of the new art that's over there on forest and fires. And Supervisor Bullock was there, several employees of the town were there, and other community members. But I urge anyone who is in town to go over and go look at the art installation. It's very informative on kind of the history of forest fires in this area and of the forest and how it's important to have forest fires, obviously not catastrophic fires, but I thought it was very well done and very educational. So I thought I would share that, and then we also got a free book out of it on the importance of forest fires. So I thought it was interesting, so I just invite everybody to go.
Thank you, Director Harris. Director Laliotis, do you have anything this week?
No updates, thank you.
Thank you. Director Bender? Good. Director Aguirre?
I don't have nothing, but I have been occasion to be at the rec center, and I did see that. And the man I was with was one of the committee members that helped put it up, so he pointed out some of the good stuff. So thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Director Aguirre. I don't have any updates either. I'm good. I'll keep it rolling. General Manager update. Brian, what do you have for us this evening?
I'll also try to keep it short. We have a couple of public hearings and then a workshop item that I know is important we leave some time for. So a couple of updates for the board. I had the opportunity the last couple of days to attend the California Municipal Utilities Association annual conference. A great conference. CMUA presented to the board a few weeks back, or now it's been a few months, kind of the landscape of the regulatory and legislative landscape for California in the coming year. This annual conference kind of built upon that with a lot of great speakers on some of the challenges the state of California and public power will face in terms of energy resiliency, renewables, energy balancing. There's a lot of challenges for California. Also on the water side, coming out of a winter that was started off with a bang, but really kind of fizzled out with not much snowpack left in the Sierras which essentially the snowpack is water storage for most of California. We have the benefit or the blessing of having the Martis Valley groundwater aquifer that's really rich in storage capacity, but the rest of the state is already seeing dramatic lowering of water storage reservoirs across the state. And so really trying to develop a long-term water resiliency plan for California is at the forefront of everyone's mind on that end of the public utility sector. Other topics were, quite commonly, in particular across the energy sector, was staffing, recruiting, and retention has become a challenge across all electric utilities, investor-owned or publicly owned. But it seems like everyone we spoke to, or all the speakers, there were 2 actual presentations on staff recruiting and retention strategies, development and from within, but also, looking for resources outside of our typical recruiting pools to develop potential future, leaders in the industry and workers in the field. So that's another topic that seems to be challenging to all the utilities across California. Kind of on the same front, I do serve representing the board as a board member on the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency. And we had last month our strategic planning meeting, an offsite meeting, great discussions with all the member agencies, which includes the Tahoe Forest System, School District, the airport, Placer County, the town of Truckee, Nevada County, and ourselves. Great discussion on the challenges of workforce housing in the current economic environment, and then how do we prepare for the out years, looking 3, 5, 10 years out, and what affordable housing in our region looks like. Looking forward to coming back to this board with updates on that fully developed strategic plan, but working with Emily Vitus, our representative in that group that's working on options like the district's potential master leasing of houses, and working in partnerships with local property owners. Also working closely with the town of Truckee on a few projects. Town of Truckee is entering into their second phase of a scoping and feasibility study for a local biomass. Joining a call tomorrow with the group on what that next phase will look like in terms of the PUD's either involvement or support in the project, and kind of assessing all of the options in terms of building a feasible and viable local biomass plant. Also working with, this board approved the district's participation in a shared fuel project. I have an update on that project. Met with Bill Saline, or didn't meet, but had communications with Bill Saline, Dan Wilkins, and Scott Mathot with the town. Unfortunately, like all of the other projects that we're experiencing, the bids came back for that project on the order of 3 or 4 times higher than the engineering estimate. And so some of the same challenges we had in front of the board with the Martis Woods pump rebuild or other capital projects that I'm sure you've heard of, where engineering estimates and budgeting were sufficiently under target there. And so town is working on kind of revising the request for bids, reestablishing an updated engineering estimate. Obviously, it comes at a higher cost for the district. Our staff will bring this in front of the board for reconsideration, depending on what that estimate comes in at or what the bids come in at. I think the original estimate was in the $500,000 range. The bids came in at the $1.5 million. And so we're looking at revising that through the town, resending the project out. And we think it's a great project. We think it has a lot of community benefit, but kind of letting this settle out a little bit, come back to our board, the fire department's board, and town council with a new project or new price. One other project with the town that's we're kind of just exploring. We talked a lot about Truckee workforce housing, but opportunities for shared commuting, carpooling, transportations. Again, with the goal in mind of reduced greenhouse gas generation, but also efficiencies. If with each of our agencies having a significant number of staff members commuting from the Reno area, how can we partner together to create some efficiencies, reduce traffic and GHG? On the staffing front for the district, we are excited right now. We have 10 positions posted out there. 4 of those are new positions that were generated in the last budget that this board has had a chance to review in the budget process. 2 of them are seasonal employees, water helper positions, and 4 are refill of previous positions. So as I mentioned with the CMUA, also in discussions with the town and other local public agencies, recruitment and retention is a challenge for all the reasons we're seeing both nationally and regionally. We did successfully bring on a new CSR this week, so we're excited about that. And I think I will stop it at that. We have the rest of them we have a pretty robust consent calendar and a couple presentations here that will take some time. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that update. And that brings us to our first public hearing.
This is the second time I've done this. I apologize. I forgot to introduce Scott Crow last time.
Oh.
And so I want to do 2 things. One is, if you weren't at the last board meeting, Scott Crow's our new IT director. Stand up real quick, Scott. We're very happy to have him. He's already making huge headway with the organization, a lot of great things in the plans there. We're very happy to have him on board. And then our next new hire is Chad Reed, our new water utility director. Chad comes to us from Quartz Hill Water District, is that the correct name? many years of experience in leadership. He was their general manager down there, has kindly accepted our offer here up at the district. We're very happy to have him on board to bring some new perspective, insight, and approach to all things water and leadership within our local water community. So thank you, Chad, for joining us. We're excited for what you have in store for us.
Thank you, and I welcome from the board. We're happy to have you both here. Thank you. And now we have our first public hearing that we are going to open for, there we go. So here we are at 6 p.m. or soon thereafter as possible, 6:15. Public hearing to be conducted for receiving comments from members of the public regarding consideration of adopting ordinance 2022-01, amending the water connection fees and water meter box upgrade fees. This item involves updating and settling water connection and meter box fees. Is that the end? Yes. So I know that we do have a public comment regarding this from Mr. Patrick Flora, representing the Contractors Association of Truckee Tahoe. So his comment is as follows.
Madam President,
Yes.
may I suggest that you open the public hearing and then read that comment into the record?
I felt like I had just opened it, but if that wasn't clear, I am now officially opening the hearing regarding receiving comments for adopting ordinance 2022-01.
Thank you. Use the magic words now.
Okay,
Open it,
that's
yes.
it's very specific. I thought I was there, but not quite over the finish line. So now we're open. I'm going to read Mr. Flora's comment. And as outlined in the staff report, the proposed fee increases will result in the following percent increase. So currently this is going to get complicated because I have to read numbers, 5/8 and 3/4, currently 1,290, proposed 1,800, and that is a 39.53% increase. We're going to continue down. The next one is 39.84% increase. Then for our 1 inch is 39.86% increase. A box upgrade for a box not previously upgraded is $600 currently, proposed to be increased to $880, which is a 46.66% upgrade. And a box upgrade for a box previously upgraded currently is $150, and we are proposing raising it to $220, which is also a 46.66% increase, as per the staff report. So the connection fee is governed by ordinance 2012-02, as noted in the ordinance. Connection fees are charged to reimburse the district for actual administrative, material, and labor costs of connecting to the water system, excluding the service lateral. Ordinance 2012-02 does not include language for an annual inflationary adjustment, and connection fees have not been adjusted since 2012. Water connection fee and water meter box upgrade fee adjustment. The district has experienced sizable increases in the cost of labor and materials since the water connection fee and water meter box upgrade fee were adopted. So that was all pulled out of our staff report, and now this part is Mr. Flora. We acknowledge that fee increases due to inflation and actual material and labor costs are necessary for the district to operate in an equitable and fiscally responsible manner. We would encourage the board to take into consideration the cumulative impact of fee increases on housing, and specifically workforce/achievable housing in the Truckee Tahoe region. Total fees across all agencies for SFR, single-family residential in Truckee, have increased an average of 58% since 2006, far outpacing inflation. We respectfully request that the board review detailed cost analysis relative to these increases, and that any increase above 10% of current fees be phased in over a 5-year period. Thank you for your attention to this subject. Patrick Flora. Thank you, Mr. Flora, for your comment. And I don't, do we get to respond, or do we? Okay, we'll wait.
We can have the staff presentation now.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Clarification there. And I believe that is our only public comment on this hearing tonight for this particular first hearing. So do we have a staff presentation this evening?
Yes, Madam President, I am prepared with the staff presentation, if you would so desire it.
I think that would be perfect.
So yes, this is item number 8, consideration of amending water connection fees and water meter box upgrade fees. So the district has 3 fees associated with water service connections for new construction: the water facilities fee, the water connection fee, and the water meter box upgrade fee. I'm going to briefly go through each one of them. We are not recommending any changes to the water facilities fee at this time. So the water facilities fee is governed by Ordinance 2012-01. The purpose of the facilities fee is to finance public water system facilities needed to service new development and to reduce the impacts of additional demands on the existing water system caused by new development within the district's water service area. And the ordinance 2012-01 does include language to adjust facility fees on an annual basis to account for inflation. So the fees have been adjusted annually since 2012. Listed here is the current fee structure. For single-family residences, the fee is based on the habitable square footage of the residence, and that number is taken directly from the permit application for either the town of Truckee or Placer County. And the current fee is $2.06 per square foot. And for other development that is not a single-family residence, the fee is based on meter size, and the fee structure is shown here in the table. So the water connection fee is governed by Ordinance 2012-02. And as stated in that ordinance, connection fees are charged to reimburse the district for the actual administrative, material, and labor costs of connecting to the water system, excluding the service lateral. And this ordinance does not include language for an annual inflationary adjustment. The connection fee is based on meter size, and it's the same fee schedule for all development, single-family residential or otherwise. And again, the current fee schedule is outlined here in the table. The water meter box upgrade fee is governed by Ordinance 2014-03. And the purpose of this fee is to cover the cost associated with the upgrade of a water meter box to provide sufficient fire sprinkler flows. And the installation of fire sprinklers is a requirement that was imposed by the state of California. That is not something that we developed independently here at the district. This fee applies only to some single-family residential development. In some cases, the existing meter box is adequate to supply fire sprinkler flows, and an upgrade is not necessary. For new subdivisions that have been constructed since the requirement was put into place, the upgraded meter box is installed at the time of initial construction, and an upgrade is not necessary. And the upgrade is only performed when requested by the owner or developer. So it is not, we don't just go out and do this work for every home. It is requested work. And again, Ordinance 2014-03 does not include language for an annual inflationary adjustment, and the current fee structure is identified here in the table. So since we have experienced sizable increases in the cost of labor and materials since the adoption of the relevant ordinances, and it is also recommended that we do implement an annual inflationary adjustment going forward, and we are recommending that we use the same methodology that has already been incorporated into the ordinance that governs facilities fees. So the proposed water connection fee schedule is outlined here in the table. And as indicated in the letter from Mr. Flora, this is approximately a 40% increase from our current schedule, again, over the span of 10 years. And outlined here is the proposed water meter box upgrade fee schedule. Again, an increase from $600 to $880 for a meter box that was not previously upgraded, and from $150 to $220 for a box that was previously upgraded. In terms of fiscal impact, the existing water connection fee and water meter box upgrade fee are not sufficient to cover the district's cost for these activities. And adjusting these fees to reflect current costs and including an inflation adjustment methodology will allow for this development activity to remain revenue neutral. So the recommendation before you is to conduct the public hearing to receive public input regarding the proposed ordinance 2022-01, and then to consider adoption of the ordinance.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think that did a great job of summing things up for me. I'm going to now open it up to director comments, if we have any, or questions.
I want to ask if there are any other public comments.
Are there any other public comments? What a great question.
No, Madam President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So in light of no more public comments, do we have any board comments or director comments or questions?
Madam President, for your consideration, maybe you'd like to close the public hearing at this point.
I always feel like that's so quick, but I'm happy to do that. We have no other comments, the public's not here, so I will now close that session. We are now closing the hearing. And I still want to know if we have do we have anything? We good? Everybody's good?
I think this is all pretty
It is.
self-explanatory, pretty put together. Thank you, Neil.
I've got a question.
Yes.
When we went to determine the development of these fees, I look at CAT as probably being one of our biggest customers paying these fees. And we're a small utility, a small community utility, and just wondering if you do reach out to CAT, on you changing these, just kind of heading it off ahead of time and trying to help explain it to them ahead of time? Or do they find out about these fees through this process of the public information that what we're doing right now?
Great question. And I had an opportunity to meet with Kelly Cutler and Patrick Flora from CAT last week for about 2 hours, and it was a great discussion on that topic and the topic of the fees and moving forward. And so what I did articulate to Kelly and Patrick was that there was an oversight in the district not reaching out ahead of time to CAT prior to development of these fees, that during the last couple of years, I think both the district and CAT had some changes in some leadership and organizations there, and so that conduit or pathway for communication got clouded a bit, and we're happy to have reestablished that. I want to thank Kelly and Patrick for taking the time to come visit us here at the district. We had a great discussion. Patrick's, one of his closing comments is he has a new perspective and understands where the district's coming from. Likewise on our part with them. So we had a great discussion on that. I think everyone's working with the same understanding of obviously containing cost in an environment where everything's getting more expensive. Case in point, some of our own projects, the town projects, and both Kelly and Patrick were very, presented the case very well that, local contractors are also facing the same thing. And so where we can contain costs, it's important. We also, in kind of response that we're trying to keep cost revenue neutral so that we're at least accounting for the district's cost and that ratepayers aren't subsidizing other activities within our organization. And so great positive discussion. I think in the future, we have a great a plan to have quarterly meetings with CAT and maintain that communication.
That's good to hear. I'm very happy to hear that. So, and out of curiosity, do you know if Patrick's letter was written after those meetings? Or,
I don't know when it was written, but I know it was submitted after those meetings. There was a previous inquiry with the district where we had some difference in some numbers and calculations on what the net impact to contractors would be. After the discussion with better understanding of the numbers and the actual data on both parties' part, I think he reformatted, reconsidered, and submitted a different public comment, if I am correct.
okay. And then the fees that are not tied to inflation, when was the last time that we increased those fees?
So the connection, the water connection fee is governed again by ordinance 2012-02. So the last time that was adjusted was 2012. And the water meter box upgrade fee was initially implemented in 2014 and has remained unchanged since that time.
Okay. And I always appreciate when we receive public comment with solutions and with suggestions on things to do. And I appreciate that Patrick points out, asking the board to delve in a little bit further and to also maybe consider doing the increases phased over a 5-year period. So I would like to listen to our constituents and consider doing something like that, or meet somewhere in the middle, instead of doing the full increase, phase it in over maybe 2 or 3 years rather than 5, but, try to kind of meet somewhere in the middle and get to where we want to be, in the long run, but still listen to, the people that are purchasing our products.
Thank you for that comment, Director Harris. Director Laliotis, did you have?
Just a housekeeping item, maybe, Steve, sorry to put you on the spot, but where do these fees fit in with Prop 218?
They're not subject to Prop 218. They're not considered recurring regular service charges, and so therefore they're not covered by Prop 218 in that process.
Perfect, thank you. And once again, thank you, Kat, for your comments. We're all experiencing an unfortunate economic time for everything that we seem to be touching, whether it's personal, through work, whatnot. It's getting very challenging to financially work through some of these things. I know the fire district most recently increased their mitigation fees significantly for new development. I think much more from the order of 40%. These things are going on in our community. And while we want to definitely encourage development and encourage workforce housing and encourage low-income housing, we also have to take stock in what we are doing financially and protecting all of our customers from having to subsidize development. I get it. It's an increase. I think it was an oversight that we didn't gradually increase these fees and review these fees. But I think a lot of things have come to light in the last 2 years with costs, with, running a business. And it's become much more challenging and much more costly. At this point, I hear Kat 100%. And we definitely are trying to mitigate moving forward these significant increases. But I also feel like, this is the cost of doing business. And at this point in time, I support moving forward with the board's or staff's recommendation based on the costs of doing business, essentially, which is what we're asking to do, which is basically reimburse staff, this district, for the cost of development. And, you know, to reiterate Neil's point earlier, fire sprinklers are a state mandate, another unfunded mandate by the state. So all of our water infrastructure that was built prior to, you know, the last 10, 15 years is not adequate for meeting those standards. So all of a sudden, the state is telling, you know, developers, this is where you have to be with your project for fire sprinkler flows. So we are, you know, have to be the bearer of bad news to say that you have to increase the size of your meter, you have to run a new line across the street, and to meet these standards. And it's not us, it's, you know, it's another unfunded mandate by the state that is creating additional costs for development in all of our communities. So I get it, I'm sympathetic, but at the same time, we have to watch, you know, where we are and how we subsidize things. So I do, you know, respect the fact that we want to try and mitigate these costs, especially for very targeted low-income housing and workforce housing type projects, you know. So, you know, and I appreciate, Brian, your update on that. And I know, I don't know if there's been any discussions about some of the local agencies trying to work together to try and find some solutions to sort of not just our specific issue here, but the overall cost of development when you plug in all of the agencies and all of the mitigation fees and all of the varying costs that bear upon a project to figure out some solutions to that. I don't know, is that part of the discussion through that group?
Yeah, one of the discussions in the mix is not just the cost, but I don't know, for lack of a better term, but the processes or the permitting, the loans, the financing, the funding. All these things are also time limiting, and so when you have an opportunity to do something, you can't strike quick enough because of all these processes in place. And then, as you mentioned, Director Liliotis, the cost. And so how does each agency equally play a part in mitigating or containing some of those?
So, yeah, I certainly encourage us to continue to work with this group and encourage the group to try and find solutions to help provide a smoother process and perhaps a more efficient process, and perhaps, you know, find some ways to provide incentives through all of these organizations to encourage this type of housing, for sure. So that's kind of where I'm at with some of these concerns raised by Kat.
Thank you, Director Liliotis. Director Bender, do you have any?
Just, appreciate Kat's comments. Brian, thanks for meeting with them. It's really good to rekindle that and keep it moving forward. It was either Neil or Brian made a good comment. Well, either the ratepayers are paying for this because it's staff time is staff time. You got to do it every time there's a connection fee. So if we're not accounting for that staff time and for that connection fee, well, then the ratepayers pay for it. So that was a very good point earlier. And the percentage, yes, it sounds shocking, 40%, but you know, we're talking $1,290 to $1,800. So $510 over the grand scheme of things. People are building houses for $400 or $500 a square foot, upwards over $1,000 a square foot. So it's very, very minuscule. This is extremely less than 1% or a tiny percent of the overall cost. And we just need to do some nice housekeeping accounting to put that money for staff time where it belongs. And we made a boo-boo on not increasing it, and this ordinance fixes that. And granted, that 40% in the grand scheme of a development project is very minuscule. So I am in support of ordinance 2022-01.
Thank you, Director Bender. Director Aguirre, do you have any comments?
This is to keep us on a level keel there. And you met with Pat Flora, and between the two of you or the staff, you came up with the increase in the rates?
So staff, Neil and our finance and accounting team did some assessments on the actual cost of, I guess, cost of service, not service delivery, but the cost of the connections, staff time, labor, materials for connection fees, and box upgrades was evaluated by staff and came up with a revenue neutral increase with a financial or economic increase over time. I met with Pat Flora and Kelly Cutler with Kat to talk about the philosophy or the justification of the fees increases and how we'll manage those moving forward. Clearly, as we've kind of stated, there was the 42 or 43% increase here this evening is being proposed, but in the future, it'll be tied to inflation, so it'll be more manageable as we go forward.
Oh, okay, good. So he had a hand in the cost of this increase.
Yeah, we had a discussion on, so that Patrick, Flora, and Kat understood why the increase was occurring, and then how do we manage it moving forward.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Aguirre. And I find myself agreeing with parts of what every director, of your feedback. Director Harris, I agree that communication moving forward is really important and to help people understand what's coming down the road before it actually arrives. I agree with Director Laliotis that, we can't, it's the cost of the service, and we can't have our ratepayers subsidizing development. Essentially, they are paying for the cost of connection to that service if the fees aren't updated. I'm not a fan of kicking the can down the road. We have to maintain our finances in as robustly as we can, considering we operate under, again, we are entirely a cost of service utility. We don't have padding built in anywhere. So we at least have to be appropriate with our fees. They have to reflect reality. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up my comments. Do we need a motion? We do. Would anybody like to make one?
I'll move to adopt ordinance 2022-01.
Second the motion.
Thank you very much. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Harris.
No, and I'm going to say the explanation is because I would like to see these fees phased in over a few years,
Noted.
as suggested by Kat.
Director Laliotis.
Yes?
Vice President Bender.
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So that is our first public hearing is completed. Moving along to our second public hearing tonight. So I am going to now open the public hearing in consideration of adopting District Resolution 2022-06, 2022-07, 2022-08, and 2022-09, continuing annual electric and water standby charges. Do we have any public comment? Or should we have our presentation first? No, Madam President. Thank you. In which case?
Madam President, before we begin, this is not to diminish Mr. Salmon's time he's invested in his presentation, but this is a fairly pro forma item that we're quite required by regulation to have the public hearing. We do have a presentation prepared if you do desire, or we can forego for the public hearing process and public comment.
I am very happy to forego it. This is pro forma. Is anybody else on the board interested or have?
Yeah, no offense, Mike.
No offense, Mike. No offense. We understand that you are meticulous.
Excellent presentation, but I did look at it.
We have seen it before. We know where we're at. And in the interest of time, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. Yes. All done. So would anybody like to make a motion on this ordinance?
I'll make a quick comment that Mike's board documents were so thorough that we did not need a presentation.
Exactly.
And I will move staff's recommendation to adopt resolutions 2022-06, 2022-07, 2022-08, and 2022-09 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Loyalton?
Yes.
Vice President Bender?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Moving right along to the consent calendar, which was pretty dense.
Yeah.
Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar?
No, Madam President.
Thank you. Do any board members have anything that they need to pull or have questions on?
I was hoping you were going to read the letter during this time.
Oh.
But I wanted to pull the
Yeah.
broadband.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did that. Oh, you wanted to pull it. Okay.
Well, I'm just kind of, I have questions about this, and I know Steve likes us to make sure that we pull the item if we have questions on it.
Indeed.
So,
So let's do that. Perfect. In which case, can we entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar sans item number 10?
So moved.
Okay. Can we get a roll call vote on that, please? That is approving consent calendar.
Second.
Second. Oh, yeah, we need a second. Joe,
Second.
Director Aguirre gave us a second. I was talking over it.
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Harris.
yes,
Director Loyalton?
Yes.
Vice President Bender?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes,
Thank you very much.
very good. Are we going to discuss item number 10 now? I believe we are. What are your questions, Director Harris?
is there a presentation? I don't want to jump in.
No, staff does not have a presentation, but we are prepared to answer any questions.
Okay, great. So I'm just curious, we are retiring the Broadband Standing Committee, and I'm just kind of wondering kind of what the plan is, like what's going on from here. We received the letter about, from Bob Marshall, recommending that we hire a consultant, and I know that we had talked to a consultant. I'm just wondering what kind of the plan is, when the next time we will see broadband, is there a new group kind of meeting, to the side, like, just kind of fill me in on what's going on, or fill the community and all of us in.
Yes, thank you. The Broadband Committee had met as a standing committee. As you guys recall, that the board had appointed that committee. It was a Brown Act committee. So they had completed their task when they came and presented to the Board of Directors in the March meeting, I believe that is. From that point forward, a number of those committee members still wanted to continue on ad hoc-ish kind of a role, but in order to have an ad hoc committee appointed by the board, it would require a board or two members to serve on that ad hoc committee. So what we had chosen to do is create a GM task force committee so that they're advisory to staff. And that is what this item is doing, is retiring the standing committee out of the Brown Act, and then Brian will create the GM task force meeting. However, we did want to increase that transparency for the community because broadband is a hot topic. So the clerk's department will continue to do minutes and agendas and that kind of a thing, just to ensure that we have that transparency in the public realm. There are 5 members that would like to continue on that. To work with staff. And does that answer all your questions?
When is their first meeting, and how often do they plan on meeting?
So we'll establish a calendar once we can convene the first meeting. First, we wanted to present to the board staff's proposal of ending or concluding the standing committee. That their task has been completed, and so that committee ends. As Ms. Kolomeyer pointed out, that we wanted to continue the public process, but keep the committees more nimble. So we've had some feedback from each of the existing committee members that, they wish to be able to participate remotely, that be able to convene on short notice if we needed to, or they needed to. Our plan is to keep a elevated level of transparency. We'll post on our website updates on the committee, the task force, I apologize, and proposed topics of discussion at the upcoming meetings. It also creates an environment where if we want to bring in someone who has expressed interest or expertise on a particular component of this project, they can join the conversation without having to have, so for lack of a better term, the formality of the standing committee. Our first task for that GM task force, the structure will be similar to like we conducted prior to the strategic planning adoption. We had GM task force on the board initiatives. We'll do something similar and continue to bring in expertise in the field. But the first task will be to establish an RFP for a scoping and feasibility study for community broadband. And the former committee members and now task force members will have a part in assisting staff in evaluation of those proposals and soliciting other input as needed. And so, I very much appreciate the comments from Bob Marshall, who's through Pluma Sierra is a continuing partner in this, the current infrastructure. So that's a level of expertise within, the existing service delivery that we can bring into the mix. We can bring into other, agency members. I think it's going to be important to include representatives from the school district, from the hospital district, obviously from the town of Truckee with Judy Price already a participant in, perhaps the fire district and other neighboring agencies as we move along this process.
Do you have kind of estimated timeline of when this is supposed to happen? I know the first is going to reach out to everybody, get your first meeting set up, try to hold informal meetings, kind of away from the Brown Act, which I think is great. It makes it, like you said, more nimble. Do you know how soon you would be able to get that RFP out, and how soon you'd be able to get it back? Are we looking like at the end of summer that an RFP would be coming to the board, or are we looking into fall and winter? I'm just trying to get an idea of timeline.
Absolutely. Stephen Poncelet, our strategic affairs and PIO, has already started work on this. So that's where this task force is advisory to staff. Staff has already mobilized on this. And so it's board direction at the last workshop from the standing committee was to continue the process, include the committee, but begin the process of evaluating what the district's best next steps are, level of participation, and what a project actually look like. So Mr. Poncelet has already benchmarked regionally and nationally on what community broadband looks like, what agencies are in that realm of expertise and doing scoping and feasibility studies. He's got the outline of an RFP. We discovered in this process kind of a third-party nonprofit agency who specializes in pooling resources for communities who are looking for this information or plan on pursuing community broadband. So we're going to draw that information in. My expectation is that sometime at the end of May or in June, we'd have an RFP ready for this task force to evaluate and begin to get out on the streets.
Great. Thank you. And also, I appreciated the communication from the PUD about participating in the Nevada County broadband questionnaire. So I know I did it, so hopefully everyone did.
Ditto. Thank you, Director Harris, for your questions. I think it always helps all of us to hear what other people are thinking about. So shall we go ahead and approve item number 10 from the consent calendar? Can we?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Since the item is fair game now. So either Brian or Steve, the recommendation is to retire the standing committee. There's not necessarily a recommendation to authorize the GM to form a general manager's task force. Is that something we should do in addition to this action?
Specifically not. Good question, but specifically not. If there was formal board action, that could be interpreted as action to create the committee itself, which would then make it a standing committee,
Okay.
as opposed to just the GM exercising his general managerial authority to do that.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. No, I echo everyone's comments so far tonight. I appreciate staff's head start on moving this forward. I appreciate Bob Marshall's comments tonight. He's closer to the ground than most of us are what's going on, so certainly valuable input. So I don't have any other comments.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. Do we have any other director comments or questions on this item?
Okay, now we're talking about number 10.
We are talking about number 10.
Okay, I understand that we should let this committee go
We
so we
should,
can start another one?
pretty much, in a nutshell, yes.
We just have to go before the other one comes in.
That is correct.
Okay.
Different, yeah, slightly different people will be involved, and it'll be a different type of entity. It will not be a Brown Act entity anymore. It will be a GM committee. So it is a change, but it's not a big change. Everybody is still helping us.
I'll move approval of staff's recommendation for agenda item number 10.
You beat me to it. I'll second it.
Thank you. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Bender?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, everybody. That brings us to our workshop item this evening, and we have Joe Horvath to give us a presentation on this tonight and help educate us. Thank you.
Where's the meatloaf, Joe?
It's in there.
Lasagna.
It's
coming.
lasagna now. We're
It's
gonna-
coming.
It's
It's coming.
vegetarian lasagna. No. With a sprinkle of meat on top. Sierra County beef.
Either way, it's making me hungry.
All right. Good evening, President Finn and members of the board. This is item 20, review of the purchase power for fiscal year 21. And I do have somewhat of a lengthy presentation tonight, as you anticipate, I'm sure. So please feel free to stop me at any point to ask questions. So how did we get here? Well, it started off with the board approving the budgets, the two-year budget. This was approved on November 6th of 2019. Pre-COVID is hard to remember, but it was pre-COVID. And of course, the purchase power plan includes a lot of great components. Starts off with our mission, of course, which is now to provide high-quality utility and customer services. This is foundational to the purchase power plan. It also includes RPS targets, which is a state requirement. It includes conservation as a first resource. Conservation will continue to offset our need for additional electricity. The cap and trade program, which we're going to take a dive into tonight a little bit. And it's a diversified power supply plan. Diversification allows us to spread the risk across various types of electrical generation sources and costs over a variety of those resources too. Future resources possibilities and proposed resources, and of course forecast purchase power cost, which we'll be going over in detail in the slides to come. And of course, all this is shorthand for the three-legged stool that we fondly know of, rates, renewables, and reliability, but it also reflects our new, what we're talking about lately, and that has been local, clean, resilient, and fiscally responsible generation. So, how did we do last year? Well, in summary, energy consumption was about 1% more than budgeted, and the district was over budget in our energy purchases, purchase power, by about $880,000, or 6.8% over budget. This is our first over budget in many years. And we'll be discussing in this presentation the details of why, how this increase occurred, and the components of that increase. So at a high level, this is a summary of energy generation delivered to the districts in 2021. It's a dense table, so let me unpack it for you a little bit. The resources in green are carbon-free resources. The resources in brown are fossil fuel-based resources. In the type column at the far right, you'll see intermittent and baseload. Intermittent resources cannot be scheduled or dispatched by nature. We have no control over the timing of when we receive that energy and how much energy we receive. That is the nature of an intermittent resource. Baseload, of course, is the opposite. It can be scheduled, it can be dispatched. We can schedule an amount, we can dispatch an amount, and the time, and we can also schedule the time.
So the intermittent is, it's up to them whether we get it or not, and then take it away and bring it back?
Well, in this case of our sources, the wind, Horse Butte Wind, Pleasant Valley Wind, the hydroelectric, it's really due to the nature of the prime mover. The wind is forecasted to blow, and on average, it blows a certain amount of time during the year. But at any one given hour of the day, we don't know how much the wind is going to blow or at what strength. And so in that nature, that's equivalent to what we have now from TCID. The two plants that we have together total 4 megawatts. So if we were to add this new Loyalton hydro, that would double the capacity. Of course, hydroelectric is down, but that's still a diversified portfolio. Even with hydroelectric down, is it still would be an advantage for the district because the drought conditions could change over time, and we would have a corresponding clean, carbon-free energy from those.
No, I have a quick question on that one. Would they be amenable to more than just an annual contract on that one, do you think? How long
Yeah.
of a contract are they looking at, something like that?
Yes, thank you, Director Harris. Part of what they have told us is that when new Loyalton becomes available in 2025, they want to restructure. They want to do year to year until new Loyalton becomes available, and then their idea, at least in the discussions with us, is that they want to incorporate that into a longer-term contract, but only when this one becomes available. Thank you.
And when you say longer term, like 5 years, 10 years, did they give you an idea? If not, it's no big deal, I was just curious.
They didn't say a number, but from our perspective, our position, part of what the California requires utilities for their energy procurement is a certain percentage, and it's escaping me now, pardon me, but a certain percentage of your portfolio has to be with contracts that are 10 years or greater. So the district would advocate for at least 10 years or longer. Of course, other future resource possibilities would include our own local generation and storage, which we've talked about, and then baseload renewables. I mentioned, I think this is the universe of those. It's landfill gas, it's biomass, and it's geothermal. There's very few truly baseload renewable resources, and those are the three that I'm aware of. I could be mistaken. Landfill gas, of course, we're currently in a contract with the city of Murray. We take 70% of the capacity of the city of Murray, so with their plant. So there may be a possibility that we could, when we go to renew our contract in a year from now, that we could bargain for a greater percentage of that. So there may be an ability to expand that during the renegotiation process. Of course, biomass has been discussed. I will mention that there's the two plants that are currently closest to the district include the plant in Susanville, the Honey Lake plant. That plant is, I think, a total of about 30 megawatts. That plant is fully subscribed to by, I want to say, Southern California, between a group of POUs and an IOU. That plant is fully subscribed. The other plant that's close to the district is the Loyalton Plant. Unfortunately, that plant has been idle. It has been not in production for, I want to say, the last 2 years or so. If that plant were to become back in production, there's a possibility that the district could explore taking energy from that. And then geothermal. Geothermal is probably the most popular baseload renewable resource right now. It's just to give you a little background, NCPA went out to bid. They did a preliminary bid, informational bid last year. They received a response from Ormat. Ormat is a company with its U.S. headquarters in Reno. Ormat is developing geothermal projects in Nevada, and it has over the next 10 years or so. They're a worldwide company, and they have about 1,000 megawatts of geothermal in their portfolio worldwide. So they did come back with some information to NCPA last year. I've had discussions with the Ormat representative in Reno, and I'll continue to follow up with that. So they're be bringing back things with some geothermal possibilities, perhaps. And so going on to RPS, of course, Renewable Portfolio Standard requirements, they began back in 2011. Originally, they were 33% by 2020, with subsequent legislature, with regulatory changes in the legislature, bills, SB 350, SB 100. That amount has been ratcheted up. It was 50% by 2030, and now it's currently 60% by 2030, with the remaining 40% carbon-free. You see the compliance periods and targets. I will note that we're in the fourth compliance period right now, and if you do the math, it's each year it ratchets up 2.75%. So the year 2021 is 35.75 RPS target requirement for the year 2021. So our current target is 35.75. So how are we doing? Our estimated performance is as shown on this table, and I say it's estimated because, unfortunately, the way that RECs work is the final REC amounts are not known, not just the district, but across all utilities. The final REC amounts aren't known until typically the second quarter of the year. So these are what I estimate at the moment. I estimate that we're going to be about 57% RPS for the year 2021. The calculation is really straightforward. We simply take the total eligible renewables divided by retail sales. Our retail sales, it's the only wrinkle to this is the California Energy Commission has a specific definition for retail sales, and what they have you do is take your total retail sales and subtract water pumping and your own use, and that becomes your retail sales. And of course, our RPS of 57% is down slightly, down mainly due to the reasons that we've discussed, the reduction in hydroelectric output, and some minor reductions in wind and with VAO. So on this slide, we show a summary of cap and trade. This program goes all the way back to 2013. The key takeaways here is that the last few years, we've averaged about $1.5 million. This amount is going to be starting to drop off, and we've experienced that already. If you look at the graph, you will notice that the revenue The revenue received in 2021 was about $850,000, down from, if you look at the prior 2 years, about $1.5 million. So the way that cap and trade works, and as far as our revenues, is we collect them in one year, but we apply them as revenue in the following year. So it's a kind of a two-step process. So fiscal year 21 revenue from cap and trade was $1,444,000. That $1,444,000 was received in 2020, but we apply it as revenue in fiscal year 21. We budgeted 1.4 million, so it's a little bit more than what we budgeted, so that's good. Fiscal year 2022 revenue will be the revenue that we collected last year. The revenue we collected last year was $850,000 about. So we'll apply that as, sorry, I'm getting myself confused. We're applying that as revenue to the money we collected last year in 2021, $850, we'll apply as revenue for this year, fiscal year 2022. Cap and trade was set to expire, but they extended it to 2030. The big takeaway here is that the allocations have been reduced. And if you notice the two numbers in yellow, that's the allocation amount for 2021 and 2022. You can see that number of 53,000 or so in change is half of what it used to be in prior years. So correspondingly, our future revenue from cap and trade will be reduced. We estimate $500,000 a year approximately, but this is directly affected by the auction settlement price for, there's 4 auctions held every year. Lately, those prices have trended upward, so our $500,000 could be conservative. It could be a few $100,000 more if those trend and settlement prices stay upward. And this is this table simply summarizes what we've discussed so far with all the numbers. The key takeaways, of course, were approximately $880,000 over budget, and this represents about a little under 7% over budget. And when we convert that to $1 per megawatt hour, we're about $81 a megawatt hour, which amounts to about 6% what we forecasted the dollars per megawatt hour to be. I appreciate your time. It was a long presentation. Thank you. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Wow, thank you, Joe. That was a dense presentation. There was a lot going on last year with everything. But anyhow, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment this
Madam
evening on
President.
this workshop? Very good. Thank you very much. And now I will open it up to board questions, comments, and discussions.
I'll
People need to
start.
be here.
Joe, awesome job. So much information, so much data.
Yeah.
Couple things. I just want to use this opportunity to at least point out one piece of good news, is that, all of our hard work in the last 10 years to build our RPS, has put us in a position to be insulated from, what's happened in the last couple of years. The move toward electrification, the, issues with climate, and the wind wasn't blowing, the dams weren't flowing. So, once again, just another shout out to the staff and to this board and other boards who've made the decision to invest in our RPS and keep us well ahead of the curve, even though we took a hit this year. For a variety of reasons, most of which are not our issue, are not controllable. So thank you for that. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges that are starting to surface in the market and in our climate and in our communities. So I appreciate, Joe, you pointing out some of the directions that that you think we should start looking in to try and, rebuild that solid foundation and increase our ability to continue to weather these crises and protect our interests and keep our rates affordable, keep our electric reliable. But a lot of hard work I see in the next 5 to 10 years, unfortunately. But I just think that's the way. Electrification is not going away. I've never seen so many Teslas driving around Truckee. They're plugging in every night and, sucking down the electricity. So we have to also begin to adapt to those realities. So I look forward to hearing more options and ideas and what the future lies for balancing all of our resources.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. Good job.
Yeah, that was a very good summary, Tony.
It was.
Just kudos to staff. Thank you very much. And really good presentation. And I think you're on a very good, well thought out path, Joe, and team. So thank you.
It's a team.
It's a team. And that you all are doing an excellent job, and that showed in the presentation. There's a good plan. There's some great projects coming up, expanding some existing ones, so it's really nice to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bender.
Hey, this pie reflects that we're down to 52 renewable, 52%.
Yes, the pie chart, yes.
Now, weren't we up to about 65 or 70?
Well, last year, to put in perspective, it's a little confusing. Last year, the pie chart showed we were 58%, but the way that RPS is calculated, we're actually greater than that number. So last year, we were 58 on the pie chart, but we were about 64, I forget the exact RPS number. This year, something similar, we're 52 on the pie chart, but we're about 50% on the total RPS. So there's a little bit of a difference between the straight percentage of renewable and our RPS value.
Did you say 50 or 60%?
Like between 50 and 52 today?
Yes, for 2021, on the pie chart, we're showing 52% total, what we would classify as the renewable. But the RPS would be about 57%. We're estimating 57%, so something higher. And that similar pattern was what occurred last year. We were 58% on the pie chart, and we were 60-something on the final RPS.
It's an estimate.
Thank you. Provide input to staff with all the information you give us? What do we know? So, that was a good report. I mean, everything is in there. The information's all there, so thanks again.
I did have a question about Murray Landfill. Is that, as it's landfill gas, is it an active landfill or is it a closed landfill that's now just utilizing the gas?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer, but I will find out.
I guess, I'm just looking to the future. Is that resource going to stay as productive as it is now in the 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year? Because I know as you sort of mine landfill gas, it can decrease over time, just as the organics stop to decompose. So I was just curious if that's a closed landfill or an active one.
I will find out. Thank you.
And I'm just going to jump on that. The timeframe, that contract is it's being renegotiated in 2023, and the original contract was 5 years, 10 years? Do we know?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I want to say it was 10 to 12 years, something like that. It was a long contract.
And that's what we'd be looking in the renewal, to get that same sort of length of time.
Yes, partly I think I would suggest that just from a risk perspective to get a long contract, but we are also required now by the state to have a certain percentage of our contracts be 10 years or greater.
Okay, great. I agree. I think that's a very good idea. Director Harris, do you have some questions or comments?
No questions. You answered my questions during the presentation, but thank you so much for, kind of making it easy to understand, because I know it's super complicated, but you definitely are keeping your eye on the negotiations and the right energy mix and all that good stuff. So I do appreciate all your hard work and all the staffs of, getting this done for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say I agree with all of my fellow directors that we're doing a really good job. We're like, regardless of what, everybody wants to be 100% renewable yesterday, and we understand that that is not reality, but we are making extremely good progress, and considering the other parts of our stool, the reliability and the rates, I think it's exceptional progress. Looking ahead, that's what you do. I think this presentation really gave us an idea of the complexity of this moment. And the past year has been, there were a series of unfortunate events that all came together at the same time, that Vaya would go offline, drought. I know there was a third thing in there that was,
Texas.
surprising. Texas happened. I mean, nobody can predict that when Texas happens, but it's always a big deal. But the things that we're keeping in mind, I absolutely agree that we need to continue to be diverse in our portfolio. Things that you don't really talk about is redundancy. Is that a thing in this? You've been really good with the predictions. If they're like 1% approximately variance of scheduled, purchase power versus what we actually needed. So I think that's really good. Moving forward, I only expect more volatility in the weather, which immediately translates into energy prices. Are we going to be, just adding a little percentage cushions here and there? Is that something that makes sense in this context? It makes sense to me in my personal finances, for example. I build in little cushions, but I don't know if that's translatable to power markets. But those are, redundancy and diversification are the things that I see that can help us, weather the weather, as well as what we're already doing, which is increasing our renewable portfolio, because those things are less, the price of solar does vary with the market forces, but not as dramatically as natural gas and fossil fuels, just the nature of the beast. So I think that all of these things that we're doing are going to help protect our community from the volatility in the energy markets that I think is just going to get worse over the next 5 years or so before it gets better, which I think it'll get better. But right now, it's crazy. That's what you just showed us.
Yes.
It's a little crazy. So yeah, keep at it. I am extremely interested in the potential for geothermal. It just seems like a natural fit for where we are. We know that we are in geothermal land. It's like biomass, again, I'm still a proponent, if we can ever, if the town and community of this region can figure out how or if we want to do that, I would definitely be on board. But yeah, continue asking the questions, exploring the opportunities. Like you said, base load, renewable power, it's a unicorn, but we're still looking for it. So I really appreciate all this information. That was an extremely thorough presentation, and I look forward to what the future is going to bring us. So thank you.
Thank you.
President Finn, if I may add, I think you touched on an item that bears a little more discussion, and I think for the public's consumption and the board's consumption. And Joe has some great graphics here, and I asked him to go back to this graphic, because what you'll see is, in terms of the renewable energy generation, the intermittent versus baseload, and what you just touched on, and what was one of the fundamental discussions at CMUA and across the energy sector is, how do we increase baseload renewables? You mentioned that, redundancy. The redundancy probably isn't the word, but the baseload coverage, so that when a horse butte or a small hydro goes out of service, that we have renewables already in the portfolio, the base loads that can weather those storms of intermittent deliveries. Currently, our backups are fossil fuel-based, market-based energy prices and energy purchases. In the future, we have a couple, it's a little bit more complex, as the demand grows in the community through electrification, increased residency, that RPS drops because we don't have additional resources there to address the demand. And so it's a scale, but it's got several dishes in it. And so you're trying to balance all these up. I think that's where Director Aliotta started to come in about the next 5 to 10 years. And so what we're really talking about here is an integrated resource planning process, where we're looking at demand, the market, technologies, and how do we continue to broaden our baseload renewables. And so the discussions on geothermal, Joe's working on that now, as he mentioned, investigating how we get into that market. One of the discussions from CalISO, California's energy imbalance market, so to speak, was discussions about what is UAMPS, what are UAMPS, what are some of the other market pools doing in terms of geothermal and other baseline renewables. I know that, things like the small modular nuclear reactors are kind of off topic right now. Some of the communities aren't there yet, or maybe never be there. But absent those, we need to find geothermals, which are a little bit more expensive. How do we access them as a smaller utility? We have to find partners there. And Joe's working on that. And so electrification, increase load locally, and a requirement to increase renewables at the same time of creating a resilient portfolio here is to understate it is a challenge moving forward. And so I appreciate the comments from the board, and we'll definitely continue to bring back our planning resources there as we move forward. It's definitely a moving target over the next 5 years. You add things like the natural gas prices that drive the open market energy costs, the Russia-Ukraine issue. The U.S. is exporting a lot of natural gas to Europe, it causes prices to go up, and so there's a lot of unknowns there.
There are, and you just reminded me of another tool we have, which is, time of use. As electrification comes online, and Director Laliota's pointed out that everybody's charging their Teslas overnight, we should be charging our Teslas during the day. But those sorts of tools that we can, as a small utility, tackle, just moving people's, when are they using energy? And for a long time, we pushed them into off hours, which were evenings, and now we need to bring them back into the daylight hours and do all of your stuff while the sun is shining. But, we can squeak out percentages here and there from more simple things, like that's a simpler thing than building a geothermal plant, for sure. So yeah, you're right, the pie is getting bigger. It all has to be renewable. It is a challenge. But thank you, Joe. You got it. You're up to it, I'm sure.
Thanks for bringing that. Earlier on when you had that up there, it really highlighted I won't call it vulnerability, but a susceptibility to, where our renewable resources are, just that, intermittent. And the default is to move down into, the lower tiers there. And in the past, it seemed like the lower tiers were probably a little less expensive, but now, they seem to have,
Yeah.
just based on what's going on with the economy and COVID and all these things, those costs have caught up. So I think you see that both in, in how much money the extra money we spent in the last year for purchase power. So, just this graph really points out how important a renewable and more renewable base load will be to keeping us, on that side of the curve.
I think we got it. Anybody? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Whew, the home stretch. We are moving on to just regular business. Item number 21, approve the treasurer's report from April 2022, including the fund balances for the month ended January 2022 and disbursements for the month of February 2022. Do we have any public comment?
I move we accept the the
Okay.
treasurer's report.
Do we have a second? I did squeeze public comment in there. There was none, so. And we have a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Director Agora?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Bender?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
I also move to pay the bills.
We just did. You just
Oh, I
did?
did? I
Yeah,
thought
we
we did
smushed
one
it all
in the
together.
We smush it now, Joe.
Huh?
We
We've
smush
been
it together.
Smushing it together.
Oh, yeah, well, guess what? We
They've already been
spent more
paid.
than we took in last quarter, this last.
Sure, we ironed it out. Yes. And our last item, to approve the minutes of March 2nd, 2022. Do we have any comments on the minutes?
No, Madam President.
Thanks. Directors, does anybody have anything that they?
The minutes up.
One little thing, it says that we deferred the pledge. I don't believe we deferred the pledge.
You are correct.
Oh,
Minor correction.
right on.
I remember saying it, so.
Okay. It was all a dream, Tony. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move approval of the minutes of March 2nd, 2022,
I'll second it. Can we get a-
with the change requested.
With the pledge included.
Director Agora?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Bender?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's 8:09. We will be moving into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, General Manager's Performance Plan Review. I would like to request a 5-minute break or so before we head in there.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's where we're at. Well, yeah, you're welcome. And we'll see you in a little bit. I'm going to conclude this meeting of the Truckerdani Public Utility District. We're adjourned.